Happy St. Patrick's Day. You know, today is St. Patrick's Day, where we celebrate the feast of St. Patrick. You know, the guy who drove the snakes out of Ireland, right? We've all heard that story. It's not what happened, but we all like this story. It's like a lot of other Christian mythology. It's great, it's rich, it has a really deep story. It just doesn't happen to be true, but that's okay. You know. So here's a little bit of something about who St. Patrick really was and wasn't. You know, he was not the kindly man that you were told about, wearing the green, big tall bishop's green mitre and holding the shamrock and driving the snakes out of Ireland. That was not really him. First of all, he lived in the early 400s. Bishops didn't wear mitres in those days, so it was before the whole big tall hat, Whoville hat. Didn't have it. And the whole idea of using the shamrock to teach the Trinity of Christianity didn't come until years after him. So he wouldn't have been holding the shamrock anyway. And there were no snakes in Ireland. So they think that was a byproduct of the last ice age. So there was really no snakes to drive out of Ireland when he was there. But what he was a man driven by a vision. He was kidnapped. He was actually a Roman Brit. He was kidnapped from England by Irish pirates. He was an angry, angry young man. He was uneducated, insecure, and he had a few friends and he had a lot of enemies. When he became a priest back in Ireland, where his visions told him to go and preach, he was accused of malfeasance. He was accused of abusing his position as bishop, pilfering money, and having dalliances with women. The trifecta. And of all the things they tell you never, never, ever, 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 ever do as clergy, you do not flock the fleece the flock, and you do not fondle the flock. Two biggies you never, never do. And he was accused of both. Well, when he was kidnapped, he was put to work in Ireland, and he was out in the fields. He was a shepherd, and he prayed and he prayed. Although he was not an observant Catholic at the time, he prayed for freedom from his situation. And he said he had visions. He heard voices. He heard the angels tell him how to escape and how to leave, and he did, and he escaped. And they said he walked over 200 miles to get back to his home, although it's never clear of the writings that have been left behind whether he ever reunited with his own family or not. But he did make his way back to England, where he got another vision to go to school, to become a priest, to then go back to the place where he was held captive, go back to Ireland, and to preach to the unchurched in Ireland. So he honored that vision, and he went back to Ireland, where he converted and baptized thousands of pagan Irish and lived the rest of his life. It's a powerful story about someone being driven by these visions, being driven by the calling that he heard and the calling on his heart, regardless of his circumstances. And he is an example, I think, of living in the green, living in that newness, living in that open place of responding to what life is calling us to do. Because what I think of when I think of living in the green, I think of living in the newness, like the green, the new shoots of life when the new plant bursts forth. It's always that young green shoot. And that's where the growth is, in the green. We're living in the green when we're living in our growing edge. When we're in our growing edge, when we're living and discovering, that's when we're living in the green. They always say, what, you're either green or brown, right? You're either growing or rotting. Oh, that's an ugly phrase. Anyway, we're kind of like both and, really, because we take turns growing and then we take turns resting. So we can be both and. But there's something about living in the green. There's something about living in that newness of life and living in the wonder of things. Discovering new stuff, when we're learning and we're expanding and we're growing, we're widening our sphere, we're doing things we've never done before, we're trying on new stuff. That's expanding our sphere of availability. There's something really exciting and inspiring about that. That's where the excitement is, when we're learning new things. The best thing that we can know about ourselves is we don't know. That'd be the most hopeful, helpful thing that you can know about yourself, is you don't know. You know, not having all the answers gives us room to grow. You know that expression about you can't put new information in a full vessel? You can't. You can't put anything new into a full vessel. When we think we know it all, when we've got all the answers, when we are the experts in our own lives, there's no place to grow. There's no place to go from that point if we've become the expert in our own life. And this can happen slowly, insidiously, over a long period of time. We start making little rules about our lives. We have an experience, and then we make up a rule about it based on that experience, maybe based on that one time. And then for the rest of our lives, we operate as if that rule were truth. It's not truth, it's just an experience we had. But we're so busy trying to categorize things and trying to make sense of life and trying to sort things out in our lives and pigeonhole stuff. What's good, what's bad, what I don't care either way about, what I don't ever want to do again. We're so busy categorizing things that sometimes we miss out. We begin to eliminate things from our lives that perhaps could add more to them if we hadn't already eliminated them. Like a giant pie, you know, once we start cutting slices out, oh, not going to do that anymore, not going to do that, not going to do that, not going to do that, we eliminate and eliminate so much of what life has to offer, and then we're only willing to do this little tiny slice. You know, we can drive down a road one day and get stuck in a massive traffic jam, and some of us will respond by never driving down that road again. We'll never drive down that road again because it was a bad experience. And then we'll even start telling other people, right? Oh no, don't use that road, right? Don't we do that? We become experts on that road. Oh, don't take that road. I got stuck in traffic in that road. It'll take you forever to get home. Don't do that. Now that might have a certain wisdom to it. That might have a certain wisdom to it because, you know, there is that thing about we don't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, you know, the definition of crazy. But, you know, that could have been a one-time traffic jam. Maybe we witnessed not a pattern, but an exception. And if we never go down that road again, we'll never know. We may be cutting things out of our lives based on momentary facts, not truths. And let's face it, facts change. Facts change. And you know, some of us may not be going down that road to this day, and that could have happened 25 years ago. And the road is wider, and it's got better traffic control, and maybe another road was built, and it took off the traffic, but we'll never know because we'll never go down there again. And that is the cautionary tale about allowing these one-time experiences to create rules in our lives that we then follow for the rest of their lives as if they were truths, when indeed they were only facts. They were only facts. And it speaks to us about getting stuck in our ways, getting set in our ways. Ernest Holmes said this. He wrote in Journey into Life under the essay Joy. He said, if the great adventure were a closed book, if there were no trails that ran out into the unknown, and if there were no horizons beyond our present experience, the joy would go out of living. But the jubilant soul is a beholding one, and the great adventure of life, the great game of living, lies in enthusiastic expectancy of greater yet to come. We must enter into the joy of life if we expect the joy of life to enter into us. Life is intended for us to be glad. There is always a song to sing. Thank you, Rachel. There is always a joy to find. Life is not meant to be sad, dreary, forlorn, or hopeless. It is not meant to be a funeral dirge. It is meant to be a grand and sublime song of praise, a proclamation of joy through the acceptance of happiness and wholeness in God. Now, isn't that a wonderful definition of our lives, of our true lives? This is what I'm talking about. That's living in the green. What was it Helen Keller said about, I know there was a big quote, popular, Helen Keller, life is a daring adventure or nothing at all, right? Life is a daring adventure or nothing at all. And that's true. And so how do we lose that little by little, you know? Like I said, it can be very slowly and insidiously happening. How do we lose that idea? You know, because we knew it when we were kids. Well, most of us did anyway. We knew it when we were kids. We sensed it. We sensed that life was a daring adventure. We were all Peter Pans and Wendy's, and you know, we were all off to slay dragons or conquer unknown lands. We knew that there were gnomes and wood sprites in the forest up the street. We knew it. We knew that there were pots of gold at the end of the rainbow. We knew that too, and we knew that all things were possible in this wild and wacky and wonderful thing called life. We knew all of that when we were children because we knew intuitively that we were standing in the field of all possibilities. Everything was possible when we were children. And Ernest Holmes, as an adult, agreed. He said, we must learn to live by this inspiration. That means we should let spiritual depths of our being flow through our conversation into our acts. To live by inspiration means to sense the divine touch in everything. Sense the divine touch in everything. What a wonderful place to be. To enter into the joy of living. That's what living in the green is. To be in that sense of wonder and excitement. To be that place of newness. To be in the creative process consciously, knowing that all things are possible. And in order to do that, we must turn away from appearances. We must turn away from conditions, because conditions are temporary. Right? What do we say? This too shall pass. This too shall pass. All things pass. All things at the physical level change all the time. So we can't look there to tell us who we are or how we should be, because that's the world of change. So we have to look away from the things of the physical world. We have to look away from the condition. And how do we do that? How do we turn away from the things that our eyes and our ears and our senses are telling us are facts of our situation and claim a higher truth for ourselves? How do we expect a better experience of our life when we've never had a better experience in our life? Right? Isn't this the crazy catch-22 of our teaching? You know, Ernest Holmes always said, sit in that until you know it and feel it. Well, how do you know it and feel it if you've never had it and felt it? Well, how do you get there? This is a really big challenge that we have a lot of times. We say when we do prayer work, sit there until you know it. Well, how do I know it unless I've had it? You know, I feel like I'm from Missouri, for God's sakes. You know, that whole, I'll believe it when I'll see it. No, you'll see it when you believe it. Wait a minute. Ernest Holmes said we must become more if we are to experience more good in our lives. In The Power of Belief, he wrote this. He wrote, unless we can sense a good we do not see and believe in a power greater than our finite efforts, we shall tread around a vicious circle of unattainment. Doesn't that sound wonderful? If we cannot believe in that thing we cannot see, we can't get out of the current situations. So how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we accept that which we have never experienced? How do we invite that into our experience, that which we have never experienced? How do we sense that good that we do not see? Practice. Sorry. Practice. I feel, you know, how do you get to Carnegie Hall, right? Practice, practice, practice. We have spiritual tools. We teach spiritual tools here. That's what we do. We have affirmations that claim the truth of who we are. Not our current situation or not a better situation. We're not trying to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic, you know. We're not trying to rearrange the condition. We're affirming the truth of us. So we must speak from cause. We have affirmations that do that. We have meditations. In our meditations, we sit in the openness. We have visioning, a process that opens us up to a greater idea of life, maybe a little greater than what than what we are thinking ourselves. We have affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer where we can sit and we can know the truth of something, even if we haven't experienced it. We know beauty is a quality of God, and we are that also. We must become the thing that we desire. We must see it, we must think it, we must realize it. We must accept it before law can manifest it. This is an inner process. It's an inner process in expanding consciousness. And this is what we teach. And this is what we do, except we don't always do it, right? Mary Morrissey always said, this is called New Thought, but when was the last time you had one? It's a process that we engage in. It's the dance we do with spirit within. Because as we open ourselves up to a greater idea of what life could be, then life starts becoming that, step by step, bit by bit. But it doesn't if we don't make it a practice. It doesn't expand. Our consciousness doesn't expand. Our ability to accept doesn't expand. If we listen to it for an hour on a Sunday and then not do it for the rest of the week. It is in the commitment to expand our own consciousness daily. We must take time to practice the ideas of acceptance. Our prayer must become something of feeling and emotion, sensing that our desire has substance, that it has substance, no matter what the condition is. No matter what the condition is. How do we get to that point of acceptance of the good that we already desire is ours? You know, Ernest Holmes says, I pray, I meditate. I pray, I meditate. I visualize. I affirm. I pray, I meditate. I visualize. I affirm. What about you? And you know what Ernest Holmes said also? He said, that's what I do. What you do is different. And maybe you do a different thing to get there, to get that knowingness in your soul, in every single cell of your body. Ernest Holmes said some people sing to get there. Some people dance. He said some of us fast. Fasting and prayer is a method to open us up to the divine. It doesn't do anything to God. Fasting and prayer doesn't change God. It opens us up to a greater acceptance of the truth of who we are in spirit. So some of us fast. Some of us pray. Some of us feast. You know, Ernest Holmes said it doesn't matter. Everyone does what they need to do to get there. I know sometimes this prayer doesn't work. Sometimes I sit in meditation and I just cannot quiet my mind for anything. Has anybody else had that experience? Anyone? Anyone at all? Am I the only one? Sometimes I sit in meditation and I swear that little chattery mind of mine just kind of does the whole laundry list of what I'm doing after this and after that and after this and after that, and it's time to get up and do something else. Do another form of meditation. Maybe a walking meditation. Maybe a contemplation. Maybe candlelight, open-eyed meditation. Maybe something different will work. It's making time to do the practice, and it's also customizing your practice to what works for you. I know sometimes I get caught up in the whole ego, oh my God, this has got to change because I don't like this. And I love that place. Don't you love when you get crazy? Oh my God, and you start, you know, it shouldn't be this way. It just shouldn't be this way. Why is it like this? And all of those other questions. And then you absolutely positively know that your ego's in charge. And sometimes the only thing that works when you are at that place where you feel like you are the only one running the universe is that you have to surrender. You have to surrender. And there's a great process that Reverend Marcia Sutton and Lloyd Strom came up with. It was called The Gospel on My Knees. And it's a fabulous devotional prayer and something we don't usually do in religious science. But it's a total surrender. It is a total surrender of reading the Gospel of St. John on your knees. I use a pillow, by the way, because it gets really, really hard. One chapter a day. And you know, it's not what you're reading. You could be reading Winnie the Pooh, for God's sakes. It's not about the gospel. It's about the whole posture of surrendering to a greater idea than maybe what I have in my mind, the way I think it ought to be. And so sometimes I have to resort to that. You know, President Abraham Lincoln said, sometimes he is just driven to his knees in prayer because nothing else will get him to that place. And sometimes that's what we have to do. So sometimes maybe you'll feast. Maybe feasting will get you there. Maybe singing will. Maybe praying will. Maybe fasting will. Maybe you're driven to your knees in surrender. Whatever it is that gets you to that place of knowing our oneness with Spirit, so that we can accept a greater vision for our lives, a greater vision, even one that I'm holding on to with all my egoistic might. Maybe there's even a greater vision than that. Of course there is. There's Spirit's idea for my life. You know, we teach the 5 steps of affirmative prayer. Okay, everybody who's been in Foundations class, what are they? Recognition, unification, realization, thanksgiving, release. We teach the 5 steps of affirmative prayer. You know what? Ernest Holmes didn't. Kind of silly, isn't it? Because he was the founder. But he didn't. He taught 3, 4, 5, 7, whatever he felt like. He mixed them up. He flowed. You know, it was just different. He recognized that everyone was all one. He recognized that there was one life. He spoke his truth. He gave thanks. He was done. And he said he got the entire idea of affirmative prayer from the writings about Jesus and how Jesus prayed. Affirmative prayer was the way Jesus prayed. Jesus didn't do the 5 steps either, gotta tell you. He did some of them, but he did them in different orders too, right? Didn't Jesus give thanks first and foremost? He always said thank you first, and then it's done, right? Thank you first. Here it is. So it doesn't matter the words. It doesn't matter the order. What matters is the feeling and the belief and the acceptance that is behind it. We teach a way. We teach 5-step affirmative prayer. We teach a way. We don't teach the way. The way is the way that works for each one of us. You want to change your life? I mean, isn't that the intention? You want to change your life? You want a greater expression of Spirit as you? You want to live an expanded life in all of the qualities of God. Beauty and balance and abundance and power, in unity and wisdom and all of those qualities of God. That's what we are affirming. We want to live that greater life of God's. We want to live in the green. We want to be open and accepting. We want to be able to live that larger life that Spirit has in mind for us. We want to live that life of inspiration. We want to know we are in that field of infinite potential, infinite possibilities. We want to know that God makes a way out of no way. And we're sitting in it, and we're open to it, and we want to stay in the wonder, and we want to not know the answers, and give ourselves room in our vessel to have that answers flow into us through Spirit. When someone says, you know, oh, you're this way or you're that way, oh, you are so bossy, you know, instead of defending right away, what do? You go, you know what, you may be right. I'll have to think about that. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. Instead of defend right away, instead of knowing exactly who you are all the time, leave it open. You know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe there's something in there for me. Maybe I ought to think about that. Living in the green means leaving yourselves open to a greater idea of who Spirit is as you, as me, as all of us. It is living by vision, like St. Patrick. It's living by vision, living by faith, and not knowing. We don't have to be the experts on everything all the time. Living in the wonder and the majesty and the mystery and the magic. Living in the sense of what has Spirit got to show me now. I'll be interested to see how Spirit, fill in the blank. I'll be interested to see how Spirit creates this. I'll be interested to see how Spirit finds us a new home. I'll be interested to see how Spirit changes me into the greater yet to be. It's living in the possibilities. It's saying yes to that infinite field of potential. Spirit wanting to live your life, you know? Your soul is craving experience. Your soul is craving adventure. Your soul is craving all of it, all that life has to offer. So don't cut pieces of the pie out because you've already had that experience or you didn't like that experience. Live as Spirit intends us to live, in the green, in the field of all possibilities. And then pick and choose from among them what you would experience next. Live the calling of your soul. Ernest Holmes said this, in you. You are as old as yesterday. You are as young as today. You are as new as tomorrow. You are as old as last night's setting sun, as young as the dawn of today, as new as your interest in living. You are as old as your fear of life, as young as your faith and hope, as vital as your enthusiasm. You are as old as your memories of hurt, as young as your expectation of good, as buoyant as your joy in accomplishing. You are as old as your doubts, as young as your dreams, as strong as your convictions. So let the rising sun of this new day bring light and laughter into your life and guide you to your heart's desire. And I second that. Let Spirit guide you to your heart's desire every moment of every day. Thank you.